Deep underground in the city of Antwerp, Belgium, a security guard is walking down a quiet, brightly lit concrete hallway. He's making his routine morning check. He walks up to the heavy steel door of the main vault and notices something is wrong. The vault door, which weighs 3 tons, is widely open. Inside, the floor is covered in debris. Out of the 189 secure safety deposit boxes in the room, 109 have been violently ripped open. The floor is glittering with loose diamonds, gold chains, and empty jewelry boxes. In total, more than $100 million in diamonds, gold, and cash has simply vanished. But the most terrifying part is that the alarms never rang. The motion and his sensors detected nothing. The security footage had disappeared, and the police were never caught. To this day, it is known as the greatest heist in human history. To understand why this vault was built, you have to understand the city of Antwerp. Antwerp is the undisputed diamond capital of the world. Even today, roughly 85% of all diamonds on Earth pass through this city. Billions of dollars in raw, untraceable wealth flow through a tiny area of the city known as the Diamond District. This district is one of the most heavily guarded places on Earth. There are police on every corner. There are thousands of cameras. And at the very heart of this district is the Antwerp Diamond Centre. The Diamond Centre is a fortress, and 2 floors beneath the street level is the main vault. This is where the diamond brokers, the dealers, and the jewelers store their goods. Because the wealth inside this room was so massive, the creator of the vault did not just build a strong door. They built a 10-layer security ecosystem. They designed a room that was theoretically impossible to enter without triggering an armed police response in less than 3 minutes. If you wanted to steal the diamonds, you could not just dig a tunnel. The vault was surrounded by thick concrete walls equipped with seismic sensors. If you tried to drill, the vibration would trigger the alarm. So you had to go through the front door, all while dodging the constant 24/7 video surveillance watching the hallway. The door itself was a nightmare. It was 3 tons of solid steel guarded by a mechanical combination dial that was changed weekly and hold 100 million possible combinations. Even if you magically guessed the code, the heavy deadbolts would not move unless you also had a custom-made foot-long physical key. But let's say somehow you forced that massive door open. That was only the beginning. The moment the door pulled away from its frame, a magnetic field sensor would break, triggering an instant alarm. Inside the pitch-black room, the air itself was a trap. Infrared sensors scanned the darkness, waiting to detect the body heat of an intruder. And if you tried to turn on a flashlight to see what you were doing, a highly sensitive light sensor would catch the sudden brightness and trip the system. Finally, even if you survived the door, the madness, and the sensors, the diamonds were still locked away inside 189 individual safety deposit boxes, each made of thick steels and requiring their own specific keys. The engineers who built it were completely confident. It was unbreakable. But they forgot one crucial thing. Perfect machines are operated by imperfect humans. The heist did not happen in one night. It took patient, careful planning. It started with a man named Leonardo Notarbartolo. Leonardo was a professional thief from Italy, part of a highly skilled group known as the School of Turin. Months before the heist, Leonardo moved to Antwerp. He rented an office inside the Diamond Centre. He bought a safety deposit box in the underground vault. He introduced himself as an Italian diamond merchant. To pull off the heist, he brought in his team from Turin. They were specialists. A lock expert known as the Monster, an alarm and computer hacker known as the Genius, a lockpicker simply called the King of the Keys, and Leonardo's friend known as Speedy. The first problem was the combination dial. Right above the fold door was a light bulb. Leonardo and his team secretly hid their micro camera directly inside the light bulb fixture, pointing the lens straight down at the combination dial. To safely capture the video feed without getting caught, they hid the receiver inside an ordinary-looking fire extinguisher in the boiler room. The thief now had the code. Next was the massive foot-long key. The King of Keys had already achieved the impossible. Using only the hidden camera footage, he successfully manufactured a working duplicate of the key. But on the night of the heist, they make a shocking discovery. The King of Keys had noticed on the tapes that the guards always visited a small utility room right before opening the vault. When the thief checked the unlocked room, they found a massive security lapse. The original vault key was simply hanging on the wall. They grabbed the original. They used it to open the vault and took it with them, ensuring the police would never realize that a duplicate key could be created. They now had the code, and they had the key. They needed a way to beat the electronics. They chose the weekend of February 15. They chose weekend because Saturday is the Sabbath for the Jewish community. Since most of the diamond merchants were Jewish, the building would be completely empty. Leonardo's team broke into the building. They bypassed the infrared detector using homemade polyester shield and covering camera lenses with simple black plastic bags. They made their way down into the dark, silent basement. They stood in front of the vault. They spun the combination dial. They inserted their key. They turned it. The heavy metal bolt slid back. But they did not pull the door open yet. First, the magnetic sensor. The system relies on two magnetic plates staying perfectly aligned, one on the door and one on the frame. To beat this, the genius pulled out a custom-made slab of rigid aluminum covered in heavy-duty double-sided tape. He stuck the sticky aluminum directly across both plates, locking them perfectly in their original positions. Then, he carefully unscrewed the plate's bolts. The magnets were now completely detached from the vault, but the rigid aluminum held them firmly together. The magnetic field never broke. The computer still thought the door was closed, even when they finally pulled the 3 tons of heavy steel wide open. They stepped inside the absolute darkness. If they turned on the light sensor would trigger the alarm. So they worked in the dark. The team stepped into the room. They moved incredibly slowly using the homemade polyester shield. To beat the infrared heat sensor, the team brought an ordinary can of hairspray. They sprayed a heavy layer of the sticky mist directly onto the sensor's glass lens. The chemicals in the hairspray created a temporary invisible thermal barrier. It blocked the infrared light from detecting the body heat of the man. Next, they reached up to the ceiling where the automatic light sensor was located and simply placed a piece of black tape over the sensor's eye. The room was now permanently blind to light. With black tape and hairspray, the security measures were completely defeated. The unbreakable vault was dead. With the alarm blind, the team turned on their flashlight. They had all night. They pulled out custom-made, hand-cranked mechanical drills. They did not use power tools because they were too loud. Using pure physical strength and leverage, the team began snapping the lock of the individual safety deposit boxes. Box after box. They pulled out bags of rough diamonds, stacks of cash, solid gold bars, and rare jewelry. The wealth was staggering. They began stuffing everything into large duffel bags. They worked for hours. They broke open 109 boxes. But they ran into a problem they never anticipated. There was simply too much money. Their bags were completely full. Before dawn, they silently left the vault. They sneaked into the security control room and stole the video cassettes from the cameras, erasing all visual evidence of their weekend. Then they walked out the front doors of the Diamond Centre and disappeared into the cold morning air. It was the perfect crime. A flawless victory of human patience over technology But every perfect machine has a flaw, and for the school of Turin, that flaw was a bag of garbage. The heist was a complete success. The team drove away from Antwerp. The diamonds were safe. They were incredibly rich. All they had to do was destroy the evidence. They had garbage bags full of the items they used in the fraud. Leonardo told a team member named Pietro Tefano, known as Speedy, to burn the bags. But as they drove down the highway, Speedy suffered a severe panic attack. He was terrified that the police was chasing them. They pulled over on a quiet dirt road next to the highway. Speedy threw the garbage bags into the thick bushes, scattering the trash into the woods. The mud was flat with dozens of tiny diamonds. It would take hours to gather everything up and burn it. So they got back into the car and drove away. But they did not throw the bags into a wild forest. They threw them onto a private piece of land owned by a retired grocery store worker named August. August hated people littering on his property. The next day, he found the garbage. He was furious. He found envelopes stamped with the word Antwerp Diamond Centre. August called the police. Police immediately linked the garbage to the theft. When the police searched the trash, they found a smoking gun. Mixed in with the garbage was a work offer for a security system. That specific document belonged to a diamond company that owned Locker 149 in the vault. But when the police checked the vault, Locker 149 had not been broken into. It was perfectly intact. This meant whoever threw away the trash had some kind of relationship with the owner of Locker 149. The document pointed directly to the Italian diamond merchant who had an office in the building. It pointed to Leonardo Notarbartolo. To seal the case, the police extracted DNA evidence from the partially eaten salami sandwich found in the dirt. When they tested, it was a direct match to Leonardo. But the trash provided another crucial clue. The police matched a grocery store receipt to a security camera at the local store. When they rewound the tape, they saw a tall, muscular Italian man. It was Ferdinando Finotto, the law expert known as the Monster. A few days later, Leonardo returned to the Diamond Centre, pretending everything was normal. But the police were waiting for him. He was arrested immediately. Leonardo was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The police had their mastermind. They understood exactly how the 10 layers of security hell were defeated. The mystery of how it was done was finally solved. But there is one final detail. One detail that makes this story a true legend. Despite arresting the mastermind, despite solving the mechanical puzzle of the unbreakable vault, the police never found the money. To this day, over $100 million in diamonds and gold remains completely missing. The flawless heists were ruined by a bag of trash, but the treasure vanished into the dark forever. Thank you for watching.